All right, I'm going to take over here and show you my monitor. How's that? Do you see me?
Yep, I can see you.
All right. Which one looks better? This one or this one? Probably that one. All right, so let's talk about today. I am Bill Ram, by the way. I run the database practice here at GSI. We support all types of databases remotely. It's not just JD Edwards. Any application you have, we can manage the database for that. So let's get to the meat of our presentation here, which is configuring SQL Server for Amazon, Amazon Web Services, making it work with JD Edwards. So let's see. We're going to go straight to, there's a few things you got to worry about when you're creating any kind of SQL Server database. Is changing the collation is number one. There's a bunch of other important settings related to like RCSI and things like that. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I'm really going to go through the nuts and bolts of actually creating the instance and what you got to do after that. So we're going to start with the RDS, creating the Amazon RDS, which is their relational database service. You can create SQL Server, Oracle, and a whole bunch of others. So I have every slide on here is just a screenshot of what I do to create this. I'm going to create this live, but just in case there's some kind of disconnect or problem with the connectivity to AWS, I'm going to fall back on those slides. So let's take a look. First thing we want to do is go to create an RDS instance. If you're in your management console, just search for SQL Server. You don't have to go click in any of the menus or anything. Just type in SQL Server, not server, and then there it is, RDS. So you're going to go click the RDS Managed Database Instance. Give that a second to spin, and you will have the option to pick from creating something in RDS. Now we're going to create just a database. You can either click this button here, the Create Database button, or click the DB Instances button. And they both take you to the same place. Once you're in there, if you don't have any instances, this is what it'll look like. It's very simple from here. Just click Create Database. And here's our database creation. It's way over on the left. Hopefully this is big enough for y'all. I'll zoom in just a little. Create the database. We're going to do standard create. Pretty much anything you're going to do with JD Edwards is going to be complicated. So any kind of defaults or standards or stuff, you have to, don't pick that. Yeah, you can pick from many different databases here. Amazon Aurora is Amazon's own database. You can even do Oracle, strangely enough, but SQL Server is what we're going to pick. JD will not run on SQL Server Express Edition or Web Edition. You're going to want to pick Standard or Enterprise. And the version of the database, it doesn't really matter for this demo, but right now JD Edwards only supports SQL Server 2016. So I'm going to pick that. Come down to our templates. Now, this doesn't matter. You're always going to pick production. The only reason you would pick dev test is if you're doing some kind of development or testing for SQL Server applications, like running, something that's based on SQL Server. From the perspective of Microsoft and Amazon and Oracle, JD Edwards is a production server, no matter whether it's DV or PY or whatever. So if you think that you can get away with the dev test license, which is free for SQL Server, on using a JD Edwards non-prod server, that's not going to work. They're going to bust you for that. So always pick production. Next thing to do is pick your DB instance identifier. This has to be unique. You can change it to anything. You can leave it like that. I'm going to just do Bill RDS DB1. And then we set up our master credentials. This can be anything you want. I'm just going to pick I'm just going to choose the admin, and I have a little password generator over here. I use RoboForm personally for the passwords, and I'm going to put that in here. But I'm not going to tell you what it is. And Amazon can also generate the password if you like, but I prefer to have control over that. DB instance size for this demonstration, it doesn't matter. Obviously, you're going to put a lot more thought into this, creating your own instance than I will here today, but I'm just going to take the standard class. Now in the storage, I don't need provisioned IOPS. I'm just going to use general purpose. I'm going to set 200 gigs. These are all just examples. When you're planning your instance, obviously not everybody has a 200 gig database. They have maybe higher. Some people into terabytes and many tens of terabytes. So this is just for the purposes of this demonstration. And you can also put storage auto-scaling. Since this is a demo, I'm not going to do a multi-AZ deployment. It doesn't really matter. But if you do select that, it will keep your instances alive across multiple AZs. The next one is virtual private cloud. Now, I'm not going to go into how you set up all the networking and everything. I actually have another webcast that describes how to build this up from scratch, from zero, to create an Oracle instance. So if you want to see how to do that, just go ahead and look at my Oracle database creation. All of the networking stuff that I create as part of that, applies to this. So you can pick the default VPC, which is, it was right there. I also have another one that I created. One thing that's important when you're creating a database instance, you need to have a VPC that has 2 subnets. If you don't have 2 subnets, you're not going to be able to create it. So I know that this default has 2, and I'm going to keep going here. For SQL Server Windows authentication, this isn't necessary for us for this instance. Obviously, JD Edwards uses the SQL Server authentication, but not Windows authentication. I'm not going to create this. In here, we need to go into additional configuration, and this is, I wanted to show you all the RDS creation just because I can, but one thing that RDS cannot do is work with JD Edwards very well, and that has to do with the collation. It can't support it can't really support the collation that we need for JD Edwards, but it is, I'm going to type it in here and see if it takes it, which is Latin 1 general CPCS case sensitivity, accent sensitive, width sensitive. And let's see if it takes it. I don't need to back it up, don't need encryption or performance insights or enhanced monitoring because it doesn't really matter for this. I don't want to enable deletion protection normally, but I'm going to enable that anyway because if we have time, I'll show you how to uninstall this instance at the end. And here's how much it would cost, $900 a month if we use this 24/7. So if you go into your AWS account to create the server and you want to mess around with it, please be sure to shut it down so that it's not still continuing to charge you money, because you won't like your credit card bill at the end of the month, which I know. And then finally, click Create Database. See, right here, the specified character set is not supported. So that is the JDE required character set, and the reason is because of width sensitivity on the web applications. Now, it's actually, the JDE collation is actually a logical subset of the default SQL Server collation. So RDS would work if you never wanted to do double byte characters in your installation. So if you're planning to expand it to Japan or something like that, then you don't want to get the RDS. There's a lot of other limitations on RDS too, which is not so great. Like, it's a serverless thing. So there's a lot of things that JD Edwards depends on the server side. That's not to say it can't be done. I do have a webcast where I have set up JD Edwards using an RDS instance. So it is possible. I'm going to go and get rid of this collation and then click the Create Database. And then while that churns, this actually takes a little while. So you can see right here where it says creating. While that's happening, we're going to go and create a little more useful instance on EC2. So you can either go back to your main dashboard, or you can just click down Services and click EC2. Now inside EC2, in this dashboard, it's going to show you how many instances you have. It's just going to show you an overview. You can launch a new instance by scrolling down here and clicking Launch Instance, or you can go into your running instances dashboard and click Launch Instance from there. Now you'll see that I have actually an instance from before. Don't need to worry about that, but I'm going to create a new instance. So just click the Launch Instance button. And then this takes you to the Amazon machine image selection. So these are all pre-built, pre-configured images of an operating system and a database. And these, they're just set up with the default. So we're going to scroll down and look for SQL Server. Well, we could do 2019, but I'm going to do the supported version, which is SQL Server 2016 standard on Windows Server 2016. So let's just click select, and you can pick anything you want. Like I said, JD Edwards only supports SQL 2016 right now. It will never support 2017, in case you're wondering. They're just going to skip over that. So I'm going to pick select. You see right off the top, there's a minimum shape that you can use for SQL Server. So we're going to scroll down until we find the smallest shape that I can use, which is the T3AX large, and unfortunately, see, I had to get rid of myself so you can see the review and launch button. So I don't want to click that yet. I want to go over to configure instance details. Oh, and there's something else I want you to notice on here is that the button for review and launch and everything, all that, it doesn't move with the screen. So you're going to have some future screens in here where it looks like that's all there is, and you just go to the next one. But what actually is happening behind the scenes is that you're forgetting to configure some stuff. So I know there's nothing else on this page, so I'm going to click the configure instance details. In here is where you're going to choose how many instances you want. We only want one. I'm going to pick all the defaults for the network and the subnets and stuff. You will want to change that yourself. And scroll down to make sure we're not skipping anything. And there's really nothing in here for us to change. You can take the defaults. There's really not anything in here that's going to take effect while I'm doing this demo. So we're not going to change any of that stuff. So let's go to add storage at the bottom. And the add storage here, it comes with this 50 gig general purpose SSD. Then that is going to be, you can change that if you want. You can make it bigger. I'm going to change it to 200 gigs because let's just assume I really am going to put JD Edwards on here. But what you're really going to do, if you're making this for real, you'd want to put a volume in for every different kind of workload that you're doing. And it's not because you can't put it all on one. It's just you want to separate those workloads in case one of them goes crazy and causes everything to fail. For example, in the root of is your C drive where your Windows stuff is, you have a runaway log file or something that fills up the entire storage, then your whole database will stop. So you want to put that on a different volume. Plus, you want to put your temp DB onto maybe provision IOPS, something faster, and it wants to be on its own drive. And just for management and maintenance purposes, still put your logs and your data all on separate drives. Make sure you provision another amount for you to do your refresh exports to if you need to. Anyway, that's all a bunch of extra detail, but we're just going to do this general purpose SSD, and I'm going to click review and launch, which is right behind me. I didn't want to pick any of the other stuff. Actually, let me go back and just make sure so you can see what it is that what else we have to go through. Okay, so we did add storage, and you can see down here the add tags button. That doesn't really do anything. And then the configure security group button right there. So here's our security group. This is just by default. It's going to allow you to connect using SQL Server Management Studio or RDP from anywhere. That source right there, 0000, just means anyone in the world, if they knew your connectivity information, they could connect to your database. but it's pretty easy to change that to anything that you want. I'm going to change it to my IP, and that way none of you guys can get in there and mess it up while I'm working on it, because I know one of you is going to. All right, so now we'll just hit review and launch. Big warning there, we're not eligible for the free tier, but I'm not worried about that. The amount of time that it takes to spin this up and how much time I'm going to use it for this webcast is only going to cost a couple dollars. So as long as you keep this, keep your servers down when you're not using them, if you're just testing, then you're not going to end up costing yourself a lot of money. So just go through and review everything in here. I'm fine with the way it is. So we're just going to click the launch button. And now it's going to ask us to do the private key. So I've already created a key pair for a previous webcast, so I'm just going to use that again. I'm going to choose an existing key pair. Now you can create one if you want from here, or within this console, or you can use PuttyGen to create your own key pair. But I'm just going to pick this one that I already know that I have. And this is what's going to get you to be able to get your Windows administrator password after the instance is created. So we're going to hit launch. This screen only comes up for a second, as you can see, and now we have it here where it says our instances are launching. Now, if you want to see this instance, you can click on this link right here. You can also scroll down to the bottom where you can see this button right there, View Instances. So either one will take you to the same spot. So let's click View Instances, and there's our instance right now. It's initializing. Now, while this is working, let's go take a look at our RDS instance and see how far that's gotten along. So we click down our services up there on the top, and then click RDS down here at the bottom. And that will take us to our RDS console. And we have 1 DB instance out of 40, so click there and it takes us to our database instance dashboard. And you see it's still creating, so we still have some time. And I'm going to go back to our EC2 instance and see how that looks. And so running instances, we have an instance running, but does that mean it's actually ready to go? Do we know that yet? So the status check says initializing, which, if you've been poking around AWS, you know that it's not ready. But if we come in here not knowing what does running mean, and we want to say get the Windows password, you get this message saying you have to wait at least 4 minutes after launching to get the auto-generated password. So we just got to twiddle our thumbs a little bit and see what happens. And when you're in here, just click this refresh and it'll keep pulling it up. I do have this other instance out here that I used previously that I want to get rid of. So we need to, it's been terminated. And I don't remember, I thought it was supposed to just disappear once you terminate it. I do have an EBS volume connected to it. And while I'm waiting for the server to come up, I'm going to run over to the storage here, see if I can find the storage that I created separately for this instance. Where did we go with that? Oh, that's right. If you pick, it will automatically delete the volume when you're terminating the instance. So if you can choose to or choose not to. So let's go back to our running instances. This should be ready to go any moment here. Let's give it another bump on the get Windows password. Nope, still waiting. So let's go look at RDS. Take a look at our little, fortunately they got a little history there that lets us quick access the other things that we're looking at. RDS is available. So let's go to actions. You know what? No, let's just click on the DB identifier. It'll take you into the connectivity and security part. So here's my endpoint, and this is how you connect to SQL Server Management Studio. You can't actually RDP to this because there is no server. It's a serverless database. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to put it over on my little notepad here so that I can connect to it once my other instance is up. So I'm going to go back to the EC2 instance. Should be up by now. It doesn't take that long. Still initializing. Keep forgetting to highlight there. Initialize, and we're going to go to get Windows password. Come on, man. Has it been 4 minutes yet? You know, this happened a lot faster in practice. I wanted to use this instance because it is a Windows instance to actually connect to the RDS database, because you know, that way I don't have to use my own local connection, but I could connect if I wanted to. So I'm going to come over to another screen here. This screen right here. There we go. And we're gonna, while that's working, I'm gonna pull up my own local copy of SQL Server Management Studio. Come back, I'm gonna refresh the screen. What do we got here? Still initializing. So you can use, the latest SQL Server Management Studio out now, I believe is version 18. But any version will work on, any modern version will work on any modern database. So let's bring my SQL Server Management Studio over here, and we're going to connect to the database for our RDS. Do a quick refresh on this instance, and maybe we get our Windows password. Nope, not yet. So let's go back to RDS. We're going to pick that, go back to our dashboard, and just to show you again the connectivity for that RDS instance is once you click on your database identifier, it takes you to your summary screen. You copy that endpoint right there, copy, and then we're going to go to our SQL Server Management Studio. Server name goes there, and remember we picked admin, wasn't it? Or Bill, did I pick admin? Yeah. So I picked admin, and I gave it a special password that I created with RoboForm. We'll put that in here. Click connect. Give it a minute. We'll go back and check our EC2 instance since we're waiting for that to connect. And oh, it's running. So let's take a look there. Let's get our Windows password. So here, oh, come on, man. It's almost running. Status checks. 2 of 2 checks have passed. Well, that's good to know. All right, let's go back to our SQL Server. Not found. Maybe this is not a good time to try to connect remotely. I probably didn't set up a VPC to connect from outside, so let's give that a rest for now and give our RDS another refresh. So one of the things that I've got to do after this is done is we talked about collation and how SQL Server collation with JD Edwards is very important. Even the AMI, you cannot pick the collation of your database when you're setting it up. You have to do it after the fact. So what is collation? Some of you are asking. Collation is what SQL Server uses to decide how to sort things in the tempDB. So whenever you do any kind of a sort or an order by or a join in a table, and all this happens in the background with JD Edwards, so it's happening all the time. That decides how that data is going to get put together and sent back to you. So if you have a collation that's on your database that's different from the user database, then that information, when it gets sorted, it could be done in a way that it comes out wrong. So for example, if you had a database that had with accent sensitivity and your SQL Server did not have it, then the way that the data would be ordered when you consider accents is different than it would just be ignored if you didn't have accent sensitivity. And in other countries, will have different ways to alphabetize things. If you put a Russian character set on a database and then sorted it with an American character set, it would just come out all wonky, and your any kind of operations like any calculations and stuff would just come out all wrong and display wrong. And that's why collation is so important. But the funny thing is that collation is the most overlooked part of SQL Server installations. Virtually every SQL Server I've ever looked at hundreds of clients, well, maybe not hundreds. Have I seen 100 clients? I don't know. But they pretty much all have the collation wrong. And they, oh, there we go. I finally get to do my Windows password. But and unfortunately, most of the people who have the collation wrong are just using United States or USA stuff, so they don't notice the problems, because they're not using double byte characters. So let's take a look. This is how we get our Windows password for this EC2 instance. We told it in the beginning, I gave it a key pair that I had created previously for webcasts. So I need to just find that. And here it is right here. So it's going to be pasted in below. It takes it a second to get it in. Then you click decrypt password. So here's our password. This is the password for this instance. You can either highlight or just click the copy. It doesn't really matter how you do that, and paste that in there. Then click close. Now also you want to before you click close, this is your public DNS that you need to connect to your instance from. So when you set up your RDP, this is where you're going to go to. And I know for sure that we have a public access to this because we set that up as part of the security. So we'll click close, and I'm going to go over to my remote desktop manager and add a new entry, which is RDP, and paste in the endpoint connection, and then we got to put in username is administrator, because that's what we said in the beginning, and that's our Windows pass, and then the Windows administrator password. Don't need the domain. So that's all we need is that. Plus, you can, if you want to, you can download an RDP file from AWS to get into there. So we'll click OK and click Open Session. And this will work. All right, there we go. We're logging in right now. So let's go back to our instance, our EC2 instance, to see what that looks like. See, finally, that instance I terminated before, it's finally gone. I deleted that instance like 45 minutes, hour ago, and it's now finally disappeared. But our instance is still running, still looks good. And let's go to our Windows box. Let me see what kind of time we have. For those of you looking at this and maybe taking notes, don't worry about this. They're actually recording this webcast. Plus, I took screenshots of every single thing that I am doing here with annotations on it to step you through it down to the very detailed stuff. Even some of the things I'm saying, I wrote in there. So don't worry about taking any notes, because we'll send this all to you. So now you want to go to start your SQL Server Management Studio. So just come in and find it in here. There it is, SSMS. Now, if you install SQL Server 2019, it's going to install SQL Server. It's going to install Management Studio 18. So whatever version you get below that is going to have the version that came with that version of SQL Server. So let's see. Looks like we got about 15 minutes here. Should be enough time for me to show you what a hassle it is to change the collation on an AWS RDS instance. So here's the thing, is that once your collation is set and you start installing your user databases, like you run the platform pack for JD Edwards, it's too late by then. It is far too difficult. It's not impossible. I'm not saying it's not possible. It's really difficult to change the collation afterwards, because each database has the collation set and each table has collation set. So the more you put onto a SQL Server database, the more difficult it's going to be to change the collation. Coming back to it later. So you want to do that if you're installing SQL Server from a command prompt on a server. I mean, even if you did it on an AWS VM from scratch, you would have the option to change that collation during the install. and that's the same thing with on-prem bare metal. But here we've got to do it after the fact. And for some reason, and I noticed this on other SQL servers that I've created, the first time you run Management Studio takes just forever to come up. Not forever. I mean, it's definitely within the time frame of doing our webcast here. But I think you can see that it's really easy to set up a SQL Server instance, and it doesn't take hours. It comes up, you have it up and running within half an hour at the most. Obviously, within this webcast, we've already got it up and running while it loads our user settings. Let's see here. So I don't know what y'all use for remote desktop, but I really love this program. It's you can see it gives us multiple folders, all of our clients in here, and multiple servers under each folder. You can do not just I'll show you when I do a new entry. You can do any kind of connectivity in here. RDP is obviously there, and SSH, and every other type of connection you can imagine. Virtualization, and on and on and on. I barely use all the features. All right, so our server's up, and it's somebody, I don't know how they came up with that name, EC2AMAZ, so that makes sense. It's almost like a cat walked across the keyboard, and that's how they made the server name. So just click connect. It's going to connect with your administrator user that you logged in with. And there we are. Look at that. We've got a full-on running database ready, almost ready for the platform pack. But we need to change the collation. So let me show you how you find the collation. Go to your databases and open it up. And then when you first install your database, you're only going to have the four that come with SQL Server. And the collation is set inside the tempDB. So we click on properties there. The very first screen, the database properties, you can see at the bottom, it's SQL Latin 1 General, CP1, CIAS. So case insensitive, accent sensitive. So we want to change that. And there's also a way to do it in via T-SQL, which I got to scroll through my presentation because I put it in there. Here we go. Copy that. And we're going to open up a query window right here. And this is in the presentation in the notes, so don't worry about writing it down. So just put this in, and it'll show all the collations. So you can see that the collation is CP C1AS, and that's what we want to change. So in order to do this, there's several ways you can do it. One way I've done before, where you change the collation in here, then you bring down the database and rebuild all of the system databases. Now there's another way to do it, totally undocumented, except now by me, to how to change the collation without a whole lot of fuss. But remember, you have to do this before you do the platform pack, or else it doesn't matter by that point. So first thing we need to do is shut down the database. So right-click on the database, and just click stop. Yes, I am sure I want to stop it. Yes, I'm sure I want to stop that. This SQL Server is probably like, what's going on? I just came to life and he's already shutting me down. It's all right. Just wait till you see what else I have in store for you, database. Next thing we're going to do is start open a command prompt with administrator. So type in CMD and wait for it. There we go. Blazingly fast. All right, run as administrator. So once you're in as administrator, you need to change directory to the location where your SQL Server is installed. So there we go, Microsoft SQL Server. And then let's just go there. I don't have this memorized. So we're going to go to MSSQL 13 SQL Server, and then bin. Whoop. MSSQL. And then we're going to go to bin. So in here, do you want to dir SQL star? Maybe not. dir SQL SRVR star. Well, it doesn't matter. You see right there, SQL Server.exe, right there. That's what you just want to make sure you're in the right directory when you see that. So that next once you've stopped it and you're in here, you need to type a command that is going to change the collation, which is a simple command. It is SQL SERVR. And make sure I'm on the right screen here. SQL SERVR, and we're going to do -m, which puts it into single user mode. And then we're going to put in a couple trace flags, which is 4022, which bypasses the startup procedures in SQL Server, and another trace flag, which is 3569, and it logs all errors to the error log during startup. And then -q, which is our new collation, which is Latin 1 _ general, CI, case insensitive, accent sensitive, width sensitive, and quote, and then hit enter. And all of this stuff is going to start happening. Tons and tons of messages. If you hit enter through it, it's going to be, doing what it needs to do. It takes a few minutes for this to go through, and I don't believe we have to sit here and wait for everything for it to come back. It's going to, right now, what I believe it's doing is it's doing some restart in the back to make sure that this works. So if we scroll up, we'll take a look at what it has done here. Of course, we're not going to see everything, but so it goes in, logs in the administrator. It's getting all the information about your server first, and then it's using the CLR to change the collation. So there's tons of messages. There's even some worse, crazier messages that come out there. They're all benign. It doesn't matter what they are, because in the end, you're just going to Control-C out of this, and then, oops, got rid of my screen there. And then you're just going to start the database back up. So let's wait for a second here. Got a couple minutes. I'm going to go ahead and Control-C, and hopefully it's gotten as far as it needs to go. There we go. Oh yeah, so what it's trying to do, it's in the background, it's trying to log in with some of its other stuff, but since it's in SQL Server mode, the database can't log into any of these extra services. So let's see if we can Control-C out. I guess not yet. Give it a second. Sorry, I'm like most of you, a lot more people at home than usual. I've been working from home for more than 10 years now, so I have pretty good setup and good routine. But now I have 3 kids, and my wife are all home working from computers. I have a high schooler right on the other side of the green screen here who is having a class right now. So I told her to shush for this whole class, for this webcast, and she's done really well. But I did hear her walk by just a second ago. So let's give this another Control-C. Like I said, all of this information I have about the collation change is in the PowerPoint. So while this is working on this, I'm going to go ahead and shoot through the slides. So watch out, here goes super fast slides changing. You can see I've got all of the stuff that we talked about. So let's talk about the reason that we're doing this collation change is so that we can install JD Edwards, right? The installation guide for JD Edwards has really nothing in there about JDE and databases except for this very interesting diagram. This is how much they think you need to understand SQL Server in the JDE install guides. So probably not the best thing. So we talked about the database collation, and I am just going to click through it because you saw all of this stuff that you can see up here. I was doing that. So now we are waiting for this step here. Oh, this is good here. This error above me is if you see right here where I have the server name listed, that -s argument is if your SQL Server has an instance name. So usually when people install SQL Server, they don't pick instance name. It's just the server name and that's it. But if you decided you wanted to give your SQL Server an instance name, that's when you would use this. But if you put your server name in there with a -s or have some kind of typo, if you do have an instance, that error up top is what you'll see. And it's kind of scary because it seems like it's corrupt. And no matter what, you should probably have had a backup of your server before you do this. But it didn't matter for me because this is just a test. Anyway, if you do set it up correct, then you won't get that error and you'll be able to move on. So here's what I was showing you earlier on the actual thing, and then we went back and checked on RDS this is in my slideshow. So you can see we got the same message as before, but then what we should start seeing here at the end is this is a stack dump that they're doing, and all of these things saying that everything's gone horribly wrong, but that's normal for things to go horribly wrong. So let's go back to our actual RDS instance and see what we got going. It's not, there we go. Yeah, Control C, I'm gonna click yes, we're out. So there's all those same messages I was talking about. Now, the cool thing is that we can just close out this database. We need to restart it. So just right click and click start. Yes, I wanna start it. So the startup should happen really fast. Now it's all taken effect. We've got the green arrow. And we can't use this same window that we used before because it'll give us a weird error. So click on it on your server, click new query, copy over the SQL statements and hit F5. See, now look, there's our collation, perfect, and it's ready to go for SQL Server. All right, I've got a few more minutes. I wanted to show you a few things to change on your SQL Server. I actually covered this in another webcast a long time ago, but I wanted to show you guys what that looks like. So I'm going to go forward to, I'm going to skip the RDS. Sorry about this. Hopefully nobody has any kind of like epilepsy or anything, that I just gave them some kind of condition or a seizure because I was flashing through all that stuff so fast. But a lot of the things you want to do once you get your database started, put together before anybody does anything, right click here and go to properties. There's a few key settings that you'll need to check, and this is all in my notes here. First of all, the memory, you want to change your max server memory to leave at least 4 gigabytes for the operating system. Because if you set it to this, which is essentially infinite, then SQL Server will push out every other process on your machine and starve your Windows instance to death. So easy way to figure this out, just go into Task Manager, Performance, and we have 16 gigs of memory. So I'm going to set this to 12000, and then you don't have to worry about minimum server memory. That's just not a big deal. Processors, this is a whole other topic of setting up NUMA nodes and processors and affinity and stuff like that. We're not going to talk about that here. Then database settings is you want to make sure that when you set up your SQL Server, make sure you always set this compressed backup because that saves space and time with your backups. And change your default data log and backup locations because when you create new databases, you want them to go to the locations that you have created for that specific purpose. Now, we don't have any of those locations now, so we're not going to change any of that. The next thing in our advanced here is there's a few things in here you want to take a look at. JD Edwards, you always want to have optimized for ad hoc workloads set to true. What this does is when you have a SQL query come in, the database evaluates it to see if it needs to create an execution plan. But if it's only going to come once, which is very common in JD Edwards because the SQL statements change so much, you don't want to clutter up your plan cache with a whole bunch of execution plans that will never be used. That just slows things down. So what happens is when a SQL statement comes in, it doesn't bother to recreate anything. It doesn't store the plan. it just gets rid of it. But if that SQL statement comes in twice, it keeps that plan. So that way you have you leave your SQL Server cache open for SQL statements that are actually going to be used again, instead of ones that will never come back and will never benefit from having a plan in the cache. Next thing to do, cost threshold for parallelism. Set that to 50. And this cost threshold is related to, it's going to look at a statement and decide, should I use multiple threads to run the SQL statement? A super tiny SQL statement does not need to be parallelized. But the way that SQL Server figures this out is based on how much does it think it costs to do that. At 5 is very, very low, which means virtually every SQL statement is going to be evaluated for parallelism, even if it's obviously not going to help it. So the time that it takes trying to figure that out is longer than if it had just run the SQL statement. So you set it to 50, and you kind of take over, you kind of encompass all of these super small SQL statements and just save the parallelizing for the bigger ones. Now you can adjust this value up and down to see where your performance gets better. You can change it on the fly, but just start with a 50. It's a good place to start with. And then max degree of parallelism. This tells the SQL Server, each SQL statement that comes in can create more than one thread to do what it needs to do. So these threads can be parallelized across all your. They can be parallelized quite a bit, but you want to limit it to the number of processors that you have, or 8, whichever is less. So if you have 8 processors, how many processors do we have here? So we got 4 virtual processors. In this case, I'm going to set this to 4, and that just prevents SQL Server from over parallelizing things and creating lots of execution plans. So that's it for this particular screen. There's a few other settings that you want to change. Let me make sure I've got them all here. Network packet size. So some of the advanced stuff I'm not going to go over with here. And then on the general tab, we got memory figured out, processor security, connections, and that looks good for now. So we're going to click OK. All of that stuff just happens immediately. So those changes that you make right then are super, super fast. And look at our CPU graph. What happened when I made those changes? It's a huge difference. So then let's go to take a look here. I'm going to make sure that I've covered all of the other cool little things that I wanted to tell you about. But that is it in a nutshell. I know that I've run out of time. I've only got a few minutes left to hand it back over. And the main point of this was to show everybody how easy it is to spin up a SQL Server in Amazon RDS and EC2. To recap, try not to use RDS because it has a lot of limitations that prevent you from doing things that you need to do after the fact. You cannot use the SQL Server collation that is required for JD Edwards, which is the biggest thing. Also, there's other things related to, I mean, you don't have access to the same kind of access to things like your TempDB. So when you're going to enable RCSI later on, once you've done Platform Pack, you want to, it's going to be a lot more difficult to do those kind of things. So just going forward, if you're going to move to Amazon, use their EC2 AMI, which is Amazon Machine Image. Use the SQL Server for that, and then make these changes after the fact. And if you can't make the changes, or you don't have anybody who can or is comfortable with doing it, definitely give us a call. I'm happy to do these things for you. Our whole team, we have 24/7 coverage of databases of all types. Every one of us is certified at least on one database. I'm certified on multiple databases and multiple cloud platforms. So if you need any advice or help, definitely give us a call. And I'm going to hand this back over here now.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, there you go.
All right. And can you see my screen?
Yep, I see you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm just going to follow up, cover a few follow-up items, and then move on to our question and answer section. Our webcast today is a part of GSI's free ongoing educational webcasts on JD Edwards. Our upcoming webcasts are listed on the screen. Check out our ERP Talk, which is a problem-solving forum where you can get your JD Edwards and other enterprise application questions answered. Keep up with us on social media. All of our handles are currently listed on the screen. You can see our most up-to-date posts on webcasts, events, industry insights, and so much more. GSI provides extensive free educational resources for JD Edwards community, including our weekly educational webcasts, our monthly newsletter called GSI Insider, online resource center where you can access our on-demand webcasts, white papers, etc., on-site and virtual workshops. If you would like to sign up for our weekly email reminders for upcoming webcasts, our monthly newsletter, or create an account to access our resource center, go to getgsi.com and go to the resources and events on the main menu. Select JD Edwards on the right. And now we'll move on to our question and answer section. As of right now, I don't see any questions. Now, if you would like to submit a question, you still can through the GoToWebinar console. But then if you do, if you have any follow-up questions, you can contact Bill or I. Our information is on the screen. And we just want to thank you for attending our webcast today. At the end of the webcast, there will be a short 1-minute survey when you exit. You'll be receiving an email with a link to our resource center on our website where you can access today's recording. After today's webcast, they'll do the drawing for a $25 Amazon gift card. Anyone that attended the entire webcast will be eligible. And we thank you again for attending the webcast. Have a good day.